Thanks for coming to our final lecture in our spring lecture series on the subject of rum running and prohibition. This is the happy lecture because this is the story of the demise of prohibition, which everyone in Montauk celebrated, as I think they did across the country. I'm Mia Chairteach. I'm the Executive Director of the Montauk Historical Society, and thank you for coming here to the Carl Fisher House, the house that Carl Fisher built for himself in Montauk. We're very, very happy to be here. We're grateful to the town. We're particularly grateful to the Aiken family for allowing the town to purchase it for us, from them. I'm really excited that we have Hugh King, our beloved town and village historian, to tell the rest of this story. I do want to mention a couple of things that are not related to the lecture, and one is that you'll see on the seats that we have a fantastic recital coming up on the 17th of May that's going to be spectacular, with a wonderful bass baritone opera singer called Andy Dwan. He's great. I've seen him at Lincoln Center. He's awesome. And he's going to be here in this intimate setting to sing some songs that he has personally chosen for Montauk and the spring. So I hope that some of you will be able to come to that. The other thing I just want to mention is that we have special guests tonight who've come here from Colorado. They are people who have a connection to the Pelican fishing vessel, which sank, as everybody knows, in 1951. So we have Noreen Moore and her daughter Megan. Noreen's brother, John Furness, died on the Pelican. I think he was the youngest person to have died that day. He was 14 years old. And Noreen has never met anyone in Montauk who knew anything about the Pelican until this visit, and she has been meeting people right, left, and center. So we're very, very glad that they have come to Montauk, that they've come to look into that story for their family, and we're really grateful to have met them and spent some time with them. They're wonderful people. So, yes, now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our favorite town historian.
Yeah, the only one.
Oh, you're clapping, huh? You'll be sorry. All right, thank you, Mia, and I want to thank the Montauk Historical Society for continuing to invite me down here to speak. Now, remember when David Cataletto was here last time, there was music. There'll be no music tonight. Otherwise, Ariana will want another birthday cake with candles on it, and then we'll all have to sing happy birthday. Worse than that, Dick White would want a birthday cake with candles on it, which would mean the Montauk Fire Department would have to show up. So that's not going to happen. Okay? Also, remember that I was here last time, we blew the whistle, right?
Yeah. Oh, wow.
What happened?
We said something.
86 it.
Oh, right.
Remember? God, you forgot already? We're not going to have to do that tonight because the Montauk Historical Society has bribed the Coast Guard, the revenue agents, and the local police. So they will be showing up. Okay? Okay. What does Prohibition have to do with the Coast Guard station? What does the Prohibition have to do with the fish factory in Promised Land? What does Prohibition have to do with the Oaks Inn? What does Prohibition have to do with Casper Row and Rose Pharmacy? What does Prohibition have to do with Emerson Tabor? What does Prohibition have to do with the Peach Barn? What does Prohibition have to do with Helen Satterley and Alan Walcott? What does Prohibition have to do with the Devon Yacht Club? What does Prohibition have to do with Lily Hill Road? What does Prohibition have to do with Marshall Prado? Nothing. But I get 20% off my order this time for mentioning his name. All right. Here we go. It's 1922. Officers make liquor raids. Find two being operated here. Seize liquor as evidence. Stills found operating at Wayne Scott on Lily Hill Road. You know where Lily Hill Road was?
No.
Well, if you go to the post office in East Hampton, then you make a left. They call that Acabonic. But it was called Lily Hill Road years ago, and it turned into Acabonic when it divided. And somehow they changed the name, okay? Okay, now, the home of Alex Santon of Wainscott was raided by officers. Listen to these two guys, S.J. Kelsey and John J. Gay last Thursday afternoon, and a still of no small production was found in operation. I never realized this when I did this talk about Prohibition like 10 years ago. There were a lot of stills here, and you're going to hear about them tonight. Nearly 40 gallons of distilled liquor and 3 barrels of mash were seized. Officers Gay and Kelsey made the search under a warrant of search and seizure by Judge Furman. Now, this is going to be a sidebar. It's got nothing to do with Prohibition, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Okay? Sylvester J. Kelsey lived in Amagansett. Okay? His son, Vernon Kelsey, lived on my street in Amagansett. And Sylvester Kelsey married Cora Miller, who lived in the house I live in right now on 72 Abrams Landing Road. Now, John J. Gay, of course, became affiliated with the Gay Carrot Shop, which was on Gay Lane, where the Gay Abingdon Agency is. There was a carrot shop there, okay? And his son, James E. Gay Jr., was the village clerk. And in those days, the records of the town and the village were kept in the clerk's office. Guess what happened to the Gay Carrot Shop? Burned down. All the village records could have been lost in one swoop, but they were kept in the safe at the Gay Carrot Shop. And then finally, John J. Gay and Sylvester J. Kelsey were the honor guard when President Harding visited Southampton. They went to Southampton to be part of his security. And you ever hear of Wyborg's Beach? Well, Frank Wyborg had a big estate down there. This has got nothing to do with Prohibition, I'm telling you. So Frank Wyborg invites Harding to come stay the summer with him down his estate, down where Wyborg's Beach is now. Well, Harding only makes it as far as Southampton, and he winds up playing at the Shinnecock Golf Club. But Mrs. Harding and Mr. and Mrs. Herbert Hoover are driven to East Hampton by Frank Wyborg. And where do they stop? Home Sweet Home Museum. They go inside. Mrs. Harding loves this cup and saucer that she sees. Mrs. Butte gives it to her. Yeah. And when I get to Home Sweet Home in 1999, I'm looking through the records, there's a letter from Mrs. Harding inviting the Buttes, those are the people who owned Home Sweet Home, to come to the White House to visit. Harding ruined it by going out west and dying. But, all right. Now, in arresting, this is just still now, in arresting Satanic, the officers believe they have captured the king of the bootleggers of the East End of Long Island. It is said that Satanic supplied several dealers about the county regularly with his home brew. As a camouflage to his illicit traffic, he carried with him a patented gas-heated iron, which he told people he was selling. He traveled about the country in an overland car in great style. Okay? Another raid was made by officers Kelsey and Gay last Friday upon the home of Walter Cassatt, who resides on Lily Hill Road near the village. This raid was conducted with a warrant issued by Judge Foreman. The officer found a still in operation and a quantity of liquor and gin bottles for sale. It has been generally known that several stills have been operating in this locality. I did not know this, that this was a problem. There were stills here. Okay, there were been a few examples of intoxication, and they're blaming it on the stills, of course. Okay, so that's 1922. You ready? Rum runners, gunmen after thieves. After 25 roughs here Sunday night looking for hijackers. Listen to this. Last Sunday night, about 25 runners and gunmen visited East Hampton in search of two hijackers who they claimed had stolen 75 cases of liquor from their warehouse in Devon. So the rum runners are complaining they're doing something illegal, and then the hijackers are taking their alcohol from them, and they're whining about it. So here they are standing on the corner of Main Street and Newtown Lane, waiting for the hijackers to come through. So now, we got to remember, there was no village or police force, and this is 1923. Anthony Bedell was not quite a police chief, and then they had a night watchman. And then the town had two people, and that's it. And the people had to buy their own uniforms and supply their own motorcycle. Okay? All right. So, about 10 o'clock, they made their appearance in town and made the corner of Newtown Lane and Main Street their rendezvous. Several of them became quite noisy in their threats to get the two highwaymen who had robbed them. So they're complaining that the hijackers are robbing them from their illicit alcohol. Charles Gilbert, a night watchman, he was on for 4 hours, and that was it, became alarmed when he saw he had a rough lot to deal with. He called on Chief Morford. The men were told to act orderly or they would be placed under arrest. They left town later in that evening, okay? Shots fired early morning, this is 1924. Shots fired early Sunday morning. Officers have a lively chase. Residents along Woods Lane, you know where that is, right? By the stoplight down the pond, was suddenly awakened early Easter morning by 5 or 6 loud revolver reports and noise of 2 speeding automobiles heading west. Before the alarmed sleepers could get to their windows, the rising cars had passed out of sight. Anthony Bedell, again, guess where he is? He was on the night watch, standing in front of the Ralston store. I think it was on Main Street, the Ralston store. There's one in Amagansett, too. He saw something unusual. He saw a big twin 6 Packard come over Panago Hill with a great touring car not far behind. No lights were showing. The Packard and the curtains were drawn. The race continued through Main Street with the touring car early gaining. When the Packard reached Woods Lane Corner, it was necessary for the driver to slow down, and it was that point that meant the car being ordered the driver to stop. He paid no heed, and off they went, firing shots. They wound up up the island someplace before anything happened. But there it is. Okay, 1924. Federal agents Phelps and Ziegel of the staff of Division E.O. Merritt Tucci seized a Ford touring car carrying a number of cases of alleged booze on the Montauk Highway near Amagansett. Frank White and John Coleman, both of Baldwin, who were in the car, were arrested. They were held in $500 bail. White, oh yes. So, okay, now, they arrest this guy, right? Because he's got alcohol. This is what he says. White said he was held up by hijackers about 2 weeks ago and assaulted. He stated, however, that he was not transporting liquor on that occasion. So he's whining too, this hijackers. Bootleggers versus dry agents dashed through the village at 60 miles an hour a clip. Wild West broke out in the east this week. There was a wild chase of rum runners through the business section Tuesday afternoon, just about dark, by 5 revenue agents in another car. The 2 cars raced past the schoolhouse. Now, the schoolhouse in 1925 had just been built on Newtown Lane. It's where if you look at the middle of the middle school, that's what that school was built. There were 2 buildings there before. Going there, and then now they're going up Long Lane, where the rum car got stuck in the mud. The bootleggers or hijackers, not knowing which they were, leaped from their car and made a getaway through the open lots with the revenue men in pursuit, shooting as they ran. The whole performance was rather exciting. The revenue men, 5 in number, had been lying in wait along the Montauk Highway all day long. About 5 o'clock, a Hudson coach sped past them, and they gave pursuit. The 2 men in the first car soon became aware they were being chased and put on speed. They were going so fast when they made the turn near the Methodist church that the driver was unable to hold the road, so it headed across the park. Now, they were lucky. In 1922, the village bought where the Hook Windmill is. They bought that whole area. They didn't buy the windmill. They bought the area for a park to salute the soldiers, sailors and women and men who served in World War I. So before they bought it, there was Lusty's shoe shop there and a bakery. If this had happened in 1922, that car would have run right into both of those buildings. Luckily, it missed the windmill. All right? All right. The pursuing car did not take the corner so widely. The race continued up Newtown Lane, across the tracks, and around the sharp turn at W. Hand's house onto Long Lane. You know, if you go down Newtown, you make that curve, and then you get onto Long Lane. The 2 men leaped out of their car and took in the open lots. They had about a 200 start of the officers, but the chase continued. There was a string of rubbers, sweaters, and overcoats flung off by the pursuers from Long Lane to the railroad tracks. While the officer, only one returned with the prisoner, the other still was on the chase, returned to his car. The other guy gets away. All right, there it is. Okay, now we go. Large quantity of liquor reported landing the Promised Land. All right, here we go. Persistent rumors that rum runners again slipped one over on Uncle Sam's Dry Navy. 52-ton schooner unloaded at Hayes and Andelin Factory Dock Saturday night is the story. So, this is what the fishermen report about this. They're really, the local fishermen now are getting upset. Fishermen report that Uncle Sam sends enough men out of New York to scout around Montauk, and that if they cared to, no more rum boats would slip in as they do. Fishermen are not decidedly prohibitionists, but they do object to having their boats stopped and looked over while rum boats slip in now and then. Fishermen are getting pretty hot about it. They're not objecting to bootleggers making all they can, but they object to being stopped for no reason at all. If the government has to stop boats, why they pick on the boats of the fishermen? The joke is that this letter will be written and telegrams will be sent and protests, and the smoke will go up the chimney just the same. Just the same. The smoke will go up the chimney just the same, and nothing will be done about it. Now, Richard Barron's found this story. After Prohibition, see, one of the places where they used to unload that liquor was Hicks Island, which is right down there near the fish factory. Well, after Prohibition, guess what? Alcohol was still coming in to Hicks Island, passing customs, passing taxes, and they would land the alcohol on Hicks Island, and then the upstreeters in East Hampton would go down there and get their alcohol. Well, one night, the boat crashes. It sinks. All the liquor now is coming onto shore on Promised Land, and we wonder how many upstreeters went down there to pick up their alcohol. We don't know. British rum schooner and 2 boats, bagged by Coast Guard. This is 1926. We're getting near the end of this, by the way. Using everything but submarines and aeroplanes, the enforcement officials of the United States government finally succeeded in capturing one of the biggest hauls of booze that bootleggers have ever tried to land on this end of the island. A 2-masted British schooner of about 50 tons from Nova Scotia, a beam trawler Sterling to be owned by Tom Rose, and the Pinta, owned by S.C. Grimshaw of this village, were all in the bag when Coast Guard number 187, in command of Alfred Woods of the New London base, pulled the strings tight at noon Wednesday at 3 Mile Harbor. Okay? So what they do is they wind up, the guys on the boat get off their boat and try to make it into shore. They get off the boat, they hail people down, and most of them all have escaped. Okay, as usual. Okay? And that's, but the Grimshaws did not. The Grimshaws are local. They were local people. Tom Rose was a local person too. The Pinta with Dan Grimshaw aboard was making a getaway at this time when Chief Boatswain's mate Edward Drivenus was sent ashore to Sammy's Beach, where he hailed a passing car. A passing car at Sammy's Beach at this time? I don't know. All right. Firing at the Pinta and hitting her several times, one of the shots smashing the port light. Drivenus succeeded in forcing Grimshaw to land at 3 Mile Harbor Dock. Dan Grimshaw, with 2 other men, one said to be Mike Dunham, an Indian, were placed under arrest and later removed, blah, blah, blah. So they got them. Federal agents make raids here. Funds find still and liquor on town land. Find 2 stills at Sag Harbor. 2 federal prohibition agents from the Department of Administration swooped down about East Hampton and Sag Harbor Tuesday and Wednesday and discovered several stills, again, more stills in operation. Confiscated barrels of mash, alcohol, wine, and whiskey, and took John Farrow of Town Lane between this village and Amagansett back with him to Brooklyn. The first raid was made Tuesday upon Farrow's residence. There, agents found 100 gallons of beer and wine, 3 barrels of mash, 100 bottles of home-brewed beer, and 2 gallons of whiskey. This is, I like this one. The agents approached Farrow and bought a drink, which was the equivalent of a search warrant. How about that for cutting corners? Yeah, then they went to Sag Harbor and beat. Okay, now, if you watched the town board meeting the other day, they want to repurpose the beach farmhouse, one of those buildings down at Town Hall. They're going to do something with it. Well, guess what happened at the beach farmhouse? All is not gold that glitters. And Sheriff Burton Howe, men discovered this week that hen houses sometimes house other than hens. When they discovered a $50,000 still in a hen house at the Peach Farm in Northwest, which the county authorities allege is owned and operated by Angelo and Carmelo Crescioni. On Tuesday, the county authorities descended upon the Peach Farm, which is in the secluded spot at Northwest, far from prying eyes, and within a short distance of Gardiner's Bay shore, where it is thought by the police that most of the alcohol shipments were made. The federal men who dismantled the still on Wednesday estimated that the still had a daily capacity of 500 gallons. But local residents have seen no traffic over the Northwest Road, which would indicate anything like 500 gallons. The 2 Crescionis, The two Cressonis and Joseph Bosco were taken before Justice of the Peace Clifford Edwards, who released them under bail of $5,000 each. By the way, here's another story that's got nothing to do with prohibition. You know, if you were the judge years ago, and somebody was brought before you, was arrested, guess where it took place? In your house.
No.
Yes. And the reason I know that is Judge Sherrill sent a bill into the town for using his house to arraign people. Yeah, there's no court system. I mean, have it. This is 1920. So, they were charged by sheriff's town men with operating an unlicensed still. The huge vats of concrete and cement, about 10 feet square and 8 feet deep, were inside the hen house, where the huge copper still was located. The entire layout was very well constructed, and the Treasury Department men who arrived on Wednesday to dismantle the hen house still say that it was one of the largest they'd ever worked on. They advanced the idea that the still was too large and expensive to be owned by the Cressonis, and it was their opinion that a bootlegging ring actually owned it. From all other appearances, the hen house was actually a hen house. But on approaching the building, the strong odor of brew indicated that a still was not far off. The chimney of the still, when stuck out through the roof several feet, was carefully conceived with an artistic-looking birdhouse. The Treasury Department smashed up men of Wednesday discovered about a case of champagne and a case of whiskey in the rear seat of a Dodge car. It was reported on Wednesday that the raid followed a close checkup which the government is making of shipments of sugar from the refineries. At the Cressoni farm, several hundred sacks of fine granulated sugar were found. A second report of the raid indicated that the office of either the district attorney or the sheriff had received an inside tip that there was a still. Oh, here's another beauty, okay? So the town now has the Peach Farm house. They don't have the still, I don't think. And they're going to repurpose it. I can't wait to tell them this in next time. The village police, here's the beauty. The village police, this is 1931, getting to the end. The village police and members of the Georgia Coast Guard station almost got that. Almost seized a van load of alleged liquor yesterday afternoon. The reason they didn't make the seizure was 1 hour of time elapsed from the time it was discovered in the garage of Walter Keck's cottage, Georgia, and the time the police arrived on the issue. Here we go. E.T. Dayton, he's a real estate guy, so. He was showing the cottage to a prospective summer resident. After showing the party the cottage, he took him down to the garage. To his surprise, upon opening the door, he found the floor of the garage covered with nearly 100 kegs of mash or liquor and 3 men guarding them. Now listen to this. This was shortly after 2 o'clock, okay? What do you think E.T. Dayton does? He then took the party to inspect another cottage, leaving the liquor and the 3 guys in the garage, took the party to inspect another cottage. And it was 3 o'clock before he had an opportunity to notify Chief Anthony Bedell, who was stationed in front of the schoolhouse on Newtown Lane. Listen to this. Chief Bedell waited until school was out, and then he and Officer Garrow went to the Keck cottage. Guess what they found? When they arrived, they found Captain Walter Loper of the Georgia Coast Guard Station and 2 men there. They entered the garage, and lo and behold, the liquor had mysteriously disappeared. Not even as much as a straw could be obtained as evidence. And back of the garage, which also served as a boathouse with 2 able sea dories and 2 large carriers, which had been made purposely to haul the liquor off the beach. Up at the cottage on the dunes were found ropes, tackle, and other gear that had been used that night. The tracks of the carrier could be plainly seen. So, Harry Hedges, who lives only a few hundred yards away from the Keck cottage, insisted he had seen nothing. The place where the landing was made is only 10 minutes walk from the Coast Guard station. The 3 men had evidently been making the garage their headquarters, as 2 beds had been used and there were coffee and sandwiches on the table. So, what happened? Well, Walter N. Loper, that's the guy who was at the Coast Guard station, formerly in charge of the Georgia Coast Guard station, has been tried and convicted by court-martial of certain offenses and is sentenced to 1 year in prison in the Naval Prison at Portsmouth, New Hampshire, with dishonorable discharge from the service. 2 other men whose names have not been disclosed are also to stand trial. It was reliably stated to the Star this week that several of the Coast Guardmen were cautioned at their trial to tell the truth. Here's a beauty. In his letter of January 27th, Admiral Billard stated that the Coast Guard had not the jurisdiction to enable it to take action against outside parties who may have bribed or attempted to bribe an enlisted man in the service. So the Coast Guard couldn't prosecute anybody who tried to bribe one of the people did. Thank you. That's why nothing gets done. Okay, Alan Walcott. You're going to see a picture of Alan too. You're not going to believe this guy. Alan Walcott, no, his story is better. Alan Walcott taught an orphan gosling to fly, helped bootleg whiskey, traveled from the Galapagos Islands to Alaska, and in his 55-year career as a gardener in East Hampton, nurtured the hallmark of Main Street's Old Barn Bookstore as garlands of pale pink and apricot-colored roses. Also on that, you know where the Old Barn Bookstore was? You know, it's Ralph Lauren has it now. But there's also wisteria there. Really, really amazing wisteria. Okay, well, he took a job in Montauk, Mr. Walcott, with Ella Satterley, whose daughter Helen Parker was to open the Old Barn Bookstore. During the Depression, Mrs. Satterley tried to pay her workers a fair wages even when she was feeling a financial strain. There was a lot of them who didn't, who saw fit to use hard times, a chance to cut down what we had. They took advantage, she said. The times were such that Mrs. Satterley succumbed to an offer of the then princely sum of $60 by bootleggers who wanted to use her garage as a one-time, one-night garage spot for liquor. Mrs. Satterley's main concern, Mr. Walcott said, was her daughter Helen, who had not yet opened the Old Barn Bookstore, who worked with books in the city during the week, and most definitely Mr. Satterley thought would not have approved. Well, as long as Helen was away during the week, she wouldn't find out, she thought, so she took them up on that offer. Just one time, she said. Okay. So she said yes. Well, the trucks began coming up the hill with the stuff, truck after truck, and pretty soon the garage was filled. Then the living room and dining room. In those days, liquor was was done up in burlap bags. I didn't know this. Not in cases. So in their haste, quite a few of the bottles were broken up and made a pretty much of a smelly mess. And instead of staying one night, they just didn't leave. They had to wait for the pickup, they said. Mr. Satterley and Mr. Walcott, meanwhile, were stuck with a house filled with half-smithed bootleg liquor, plus the bootleggers. And they were armed, they had. But who really had the old lady terrified was that her daughter Helen would come out for the weekend and find out what she had gotten herself into. So how'd we get out of it? After convincing the rum runners of her daughter's staunch willingness to blow the whistle, the gang managed to get itself and the goods into the city, but the broken glass and smell in the house remained. We worked together to get the glass swept up and carted out. We hid it in the bayberries, but the smell, all the airing and scrubbing efforts of Mr. Satterley and Mr. Walcott were in vain. The telltale stench persisted, and the countdown toward Mrs. Parker's daughter's arrival was coming up. When suddenly, Mrs. Satterley had an inspiration, and she beats it down to the cellar, where she found a rectangular little table that needed refinishing, and brought it upstairs in the kitchen with the biggest can of alcohol-based paint remover. Well, she waited there at the table until she heard Helen's car pull into the driveway, deliberately kicked the can over and went over to greet her. Well, then they walked into the house. The last of the can was spilling out. It took a long time for the house to smell like itself, but Helen never suspected. Okay, here's the last one. This is called Right Church, Wrong Pew. Okay, this appeared in the East Hampton Star, but Bruce Collins told me about the story. But Bill Bain filled me in on the other parts of the story. Bill Bain's father was William Bain. He bought the pharmacy from Casper Rowe. Okay, and you got to remember that. Okay, Casper Rowe was a strict prohibitionist, a Calvinist from Maine. No drinking, no smoking, no dancing, no smiling. He made one small concession. In the pharmacy, he sold Pico, a flavoring agent to enhance the flavor of bathtub alcohol. One for gin, one for brandy, and one for applejack. They were the concentrates to make the booze taste better. They sold like crazy. And Bill Bain and his father found these when they went to clean out the pharmacy after his father bought it from Casper Row. That's how he told me, okay? Now, here's the story. He lives on David's Lane, okay? Casper Row. You know where David's Lane is, right?
Yeah.
Right next to the Honey Inn, okay. He lived on David's Lane, diagonally across from Emerson Tabor, one of the biggest bootleggers in East Hampton. So, Tabor's house was going to have a delivery. Tabor's house was supposed to have a red light in the attic window, so the driver would know where to deliver the booze. So they would go down Egypt Lane, come down David's Lane, and on the left there's Emerson Tabor's house with the red light. Okay. For some reason, Susan Rowe, Casper's wife, had a red light in the hallway at the head of the stairs in her attic. The bootleggers get lost. Instead of going down Egypt Lane and down David's Lane, they go down Main Street, then go down David's Lane, and on the left is Casper Rowe's house. So, what they do is the next morning, Rowe sees his car outside, and he looks in the garage and sees the alcohol. What they did is they opened the garage door, took his car out, and put all the alcohol in there. They thought it was Emerson Tabor's, and then they leave. And then Rowe comes out the next morning, sees his car in the driveway, he looks in there and sees the alcohol. So here's what he does. He calls Anthony Bedell, the village constable. He says he doesn't want to know anything about it. Calls Harry Steele, the town police chief. He's not interested. He also calls the state troopers and the Suffolk County DA's office. They're not interested. Finally, the U.S. Treasury Department in Brooklyn sends out a truck and a big pocket touring car. They fill the truck with the booze and also put some in the touring car. Mr. Rowe asked, why is the booze going into the touring car? He was told it was for analysis. And who is looking out his window across the street? Emerson Tabor. And his whole supplies went into the city. And then Bud King did this one. Bud King was another captain out here. So he tells Charlie Pease. Charlie Pease owns Keys Island. It's right off in Springs. I think the town bought it. He asked Charlie Pease to drive a Ford convertible into the city. Leave it on a designated street, and then go off and do what you want to do, and then come back later and drive back to East End. You got $30 to do that, which would have been 2 weeks' pay. So why didn't he do it? Okay, finally, then we're going to have to wake up now. Images are coming. East Hampton votes for repeal, 995 to 112. Guess what community voted 100% wet? Montauk. But throughout the rest of the county, though, it was all, Waynescott was the only place where it was closed. Otherwise, it was going. Okay, now we can look at some images. Whenever you want. All right, there's the Georgia Coast Guard Station, guys. Okay? And now what happened to the Georgia Coast Guard Station, somebody bought it and they moved it. There's still 2 buildings down there that had to do with it. People didn't want the village to sell it. No, not the Coast Guard to sell it. The village didn't buy it. Okay, there they are. There's the Oaks Inn. The Oaks Inn was part of another talk that I gave where people who worked at the Oaks Inn were arrested for selling alcohol and without a license. The Oaks Inn is now where Landscape Details is. If you go on the highway past the famous historic landmark CVS pharmacy, sit down a little further. It was, you know what the Oaks Inn turned into? This has nothing to do with prohibition, so of course I'm going to tell you. Turned into the Moon. The Moon. It's a cafe. You didn't have to smoke marijuana to get high at the Moon. Just walk in. And the police were there every weekend. Okay. There's the Beach Farmhouse. Not the still, so that's the house that the town now is going to repurpose if they can get the smell of alcohol out. There's Rose Pharmacy, right? Yeah, you all might have remembered Rose Pharmacy. Yeah, it's right in the corner. Yeah. Now, wait a minute, I'm going to tell you another story. It's got nothing to do with it. Go back. Okay. You ever heard of Dr. David Edwards? Doctor in East Hampton for over 60 years. Famous Dr. Edwards. He lived 3 doors down from Rose Pharmacy. Dr. Edwards said if he could deliver triplets, he'd give the family $1,000. There were 2 families who had triplets, but they all died. So Bill Bain is living on top of Rose Pharmacy. He's going into the city to get an award from the National Guard. His wife is coming with him. She's pregnant. On the way back, she says, uh-oh, I think I'm going to have a baby. They go past Southampton Hospital and come back to the pharmacy. So they're upstairs in the pharmacy. First baby comes out. Uh-oh, there's another baby coming out. They call Dr. Zenger. They call Dr. Suchi. And luckily, because it was a pharmacy, Bill Bain was able to go down and get all these supplies that they needed for the birth. And then the third baby comes out. And the Bain triplets, they were in my first class at spring school. And who's sitting 3 houses down with $1,000? They never got it. Okay, go ahead. There's Emerson Tabor. He was also accused, I don't know if we proved that he asked his wife to drive a hearse into the city without, is that right?
Yeah, he said that, yeah.
Yeah. And who's going to stop a hearse? You know, he did that. Okay. And there's the fish factory. You know, a lot of great places to land down at Promised Land. All right, now there is the Hook Windmill. I don't think the building, what's this? No, the buildings are gone by 1925, the buildings were gone by then. But they cut right across here. They could have went into the windmill. All righty, I wanted to show you that. And there's Mr. Walcott, who was working for Mr. Satterley, remember? Now, you know what, this is another classic. So many people told stories about Prohibition, not with any sense of shame. You know, we did it, right? Nobody was ashamed. They did it, really. Well, a lot of people didn't want to talk about it, though. It should be fair, too. Okay. And there's an example of still, these things are complicated. And there were several of these in East Hampton, which I never realized before until we started doing the research. Pretty complicated. Okay, so Anheuser-Busch, what did he do? He started selling this during Prohibition, right? Got rid of the beer. So he started selling this. Oh, there's a hearse. Okay, yeah, we did. Mariana threw a hearse in here so I could tell you that story. Okay, we have stopped. All right. Okay. Now, you couldn't have a worse president in the United States for Prohibition. Now, wait a minute. Let me finish my sentence. During Prohibition, then Warren G. Okay? God, wait till you hear about this guy. Okay, no, not him. Okay. I'm going to tell you now why it failed, or at least why we think it failed, and then what happened as a result of this, too. That a lot of things came out of this. You remember one of them is the federal income tax, a direct election of the people, of United States senators, women getting the right to vote came out of this. Those are the good things. There were some bad things, too. All right. Failure to provide a judicial process other than a jury trial flooded the courts with these cases. Instead of just going before a judge and they had a jury trial that went on and on and on, and then they allowed plea bargaining shows up during this time. So that's how they wanted to get rid of a lot of the cases. And what they were doing is they were going after Mickey Mouse, little ones, and letting the big ones go. Federal agents hired were not part of civil service, okay? The money appropriated was $2.1 million less than the amount paid a few months later for muskrat pellets in St. Louis for auction. The Volstead Act legitimized alcohol already owned as of midnight. So what happened? Rich people bought up all the alcohol. They bought up stores, these people. And did the rich people in East Hampton do the same thing? Yes, they did. And of course, they wanted everything to be dry. Joseph Kennedy, the mother of Mary Pickford, and others had the money to buy up large stocks of alcohol and store it in their basements, including the summer people in East Hampton. Presidents Harding and Wilson had their own private stocks in the White House, and then when Harding was going to leave the White House, when Wilson was leaving the White House, he sent all his alcohol to his house in Washington. Okay? At the White House, here we go. Poker games. Adolph Oakes, publisher of the New York Times, the Attorney General of the United States, the Speaker of the House, U.S. representatives, the Secretary of the Treasury, Andrew Mellon, whose department was responsible for enforcing the 18th Amendment, were drinking at the White House, where drinks were served by First Lady Florence Harding. And the real Eliot Ness had really nothing to do with Al Capone. He died semi-drunk, and he ran for mayor of Cleveland and died. Agents took jobs paying $1,800 a year, not a living wage, because of the millions of dollars in bribes they could accumulate. The Coast Guard had to patrol 4,993 miles of coastline with 29 cruising vessels, 26 inshore vessels, some tugboats, and no additional funds till 1925. There was no broad support, of course, for the amendment. Soldiers returning from home wanted their beer. President Wilson vetoed the bill at first because he said it interfered with his war efforts, so Congress had to override his veto. Organized crime seized on an easy way to make fabulous sums of money that wasn't taxed. Okay? The average salary for a workman was $15 a week, and you could make $30 a night unloading or storing cases. Seamen were making $30 a week, and the commandant was making $600 a week, and after a rum runner could make thousands of dollars a year. I mean, there's such a disparity there. Country was ready to celebrate. It's the Roaring '20s. Women were entering the social circus, bobbing their hair, wearing shorter dresses, dancing the Charleston, right? Drinking and smoking cigarettes. There was no organized police force in East Hampton. Harry Steele was hired at $7 a day, had to buy his own uniform, and provide his own motorcycle. Willard Livingston was hired as a constable at $1 an hour, not for more than 4 hours, and had to provide his own motorcycle. And Long Island alone had more than 1,000 miles of coastline that was unpatrolled. By 1925, half a dozen states had passed laws. It's getting hot in here. Too much hot air, that's what it is. By 1925, half a dozen states had passed laws banning local police from investigating violations. By only one case for $7, this is what you could buy in the 1920s in East Hampton. For $7, you could buy 13 pounds of coffee at the A&P, 12 sherbet glasses at Samuel Gregory's store, 1 jar of olives, bare aspirin tablets at White's Pharmacy, and attend 5 movies at the Edwards Theater. That's just for $7 for loading one case. Of course, you are going to do it now. Oh, here's what the South loved about this. You ready? Prohibition proved that enforcing a moral code on one region was a failure. Right? So what did the segregationists do in the South? Well, see what you can't have integration forced on us. See what's going to happen? Look what's happening with prohibition. So they used that as a reason, not to change. Racing away from the agents. All these men who began racing away from the agents, you know what they eventually formed? NASCAR. Okay? Depression had hastened the repeal for jobs and revenue. During the Depression, we needed jobs, we needed revenue. Well, the tax on alcohol would provide that. The earning power of waiters increased in speakeasies. Remember, women could go in there now. They didn't have to sit at the bar, they could sit at the table. And then you got table service. Corkscrew bottle openers were invented. Women could go, women could sit at the table. The Jones Law, now they passed this other stupid law called the Jones Law, which turned the Volstead violations from misdemeanors to felonies, which made them very difficult to prosecute. You're taking the old road to Southampton, you're going down Scuttle Hole, you work your way all around to come out right where the lobster inn used to be. Yeah. You come right out. Well, on that road, you go past something called Bayberry Land. Pauline Sabin had a property called Bayberry Land in Southampton, where the rich and famous drank and partied, where they could consider themselves immune to enforcement because prohibition was for lesser human beings. And then she sold it to the industrial workers or some kind of industrial union she sold it to. Now, when wiretapping became legal, that offended people, okay? The Freeport Long Island Boatyard built 15 vessels for the government, and then using the blueprints, built 30 for the rum-runners. You could buy the Liberty Veto powerful engine from the government. Plea bargaining was introduced to handle hundreds of cases, I told you that. There were only 3 federal prisons by 1925. The prohibition, I told you, they spent more time on small violators than the big timers. Alcohol consumption fell by 30% at the beginning of Prohibition and then increased by 60 to 70% by the end of Prohibition. And here's one of the bad things. Immigrants were demonized as violators of the Volstead Act, and moves were undertook to limit their access to voting. Those terrible immigration laws of 1924 were the result of this. Support for women voting to increase in support for limiting the alcohol. They wanted women to vote, especially if you were a prohibitionist. But now when women began to vote, it's a different story. President Coolidge cut the budget for the Alcohol Bureau. Hollywood movies showed people drinking, and millions attended the movies as diversion from the Depression. Invention of, oh yeah, you know when you watch the Titanic, after dinner the men would adjourn for brandy and cigars, and the women would go someplace else. Well, invention of the party, where men and women drank together and listened to music, began during the Prohibition. Mixers added to alcohol hid the taste of the liquor. Oh, here we go. Physicians, dentists, veterinarians, and druggists could prescribe alcohol. So you could say your horse has diabetes and he needs something. And then wine could be served at religious services. It's amazing how many people got religious. Okay, this is the last one. And then we're going to have more images. So right. As the Circle and White Star lines approached the 3-mile limit on Long Island, they would dump into the sea all alcohol not consumed by the passengers and crew. All right? Immigration Act of 1924, the result of Prohibition, blaming immigrants, the scum of the old world, for disobeying the liquor laws. Some states like Massachusetts and Maryland told the federal government they would not cooperate. Congress created no new judgeships, no new positions in the attorney's office, and no new money for federal prisons. After confiscating rum runners' boats, the government would put them up for auction, and the rum runners would buy them back. Can't make this stuff up. Oh, Al Capone. Okay, Al Capone shows up. Al Capone case ruling that the requirement of bootlegger to file a tax return on this illegal income did not infringe on his Fifth Amendment rights of self-incrimination. Okay? Wealth realized, oh, now this is what the wealthy people realized. They realized that with the repeal, and now you have taxes on liquor, right? With that repeal, maybe we can get rid of the income tax and the corporate tax. See, that was going to be their plan. Didn't work. Okay. The Depression made it necessary to need more revenue and create more jobs. And the PICO, remember the agent, and Pauline Sabin encouraged women into active and independent engagement in the nation's political life. Big thing. Bayberry Lane was sold to the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers in 1949. It's now time for Ariana's images. There they are. This is the last call. See, so you could buy all the alcohol you wanted. You have a whole year to load up. Okay, dumb idea. Okay. And there's Andrew Mellon, the Secretary of the Treasury, who was supposed to be enforcing Prohibition, drinking at the White House with the one and only President Harding. Oh, kosher wine. There it is. Kosher wine. Yes, sir. Okay, now here's a prescription. This is, you can get a prescription for alcohol, for something. So this is one of these prescriptions for use of druggists or pharmacists only. This prescription must not be refilled, just like today. Go ahead. Oh, I know. Yeah. Here's an account book. This is all the reasons these people needed this alcohol prescription. Every one of them had disability. Look at it up at the top. Disability, 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 disability. Okay. Oh, yeah. Here is wines and liquors for medicinal purposes. Oh, no. Price list for physicians and dentists. So you can go to the dentist and get something too.
Oh my God.
I know. That's why, this is why it didn't work. Okay. Yeah, you don't have to go so fast. You're right. They want to I need a drink too. Good. Okay. Now, Al Smith, even though he lost because of the terrible anti-Catholic feeling in the country, plus he was a prohibitionist, an anti-prohibitionist, and even though he lost the election, he created a lot of impetus to get rid of this law through his run for president in 1928. Okay, this is where you would just drop everything off before you land.
Chalk Airlines.
Yeah.
It's the first international airline in the country.
First international airline.
Yes.
Boy, they were ahead of the game,
It
weren't
was
they?
Miami and I was on those planes.
During Prohibition?
Yeah, be careful.
I know. Wait a minute, I made a mistake. I assumed that Mr. Aiken was older than me, and I was wrong. This is my last talk here. Okay, look how this guy is paying advice. We have any second? Look at this, you can put it inside the heel of your right?
Yeah.
You're drinking from that? Is that the idea?
What?
You're drinking from that?
I don't know. I don't know if you want to drink from it. Yes, a straw, you could, you're right. Hey. You know, David Cataletto showed this last time, right? The lumber truck. Well, there's Al Capone who claimed that he shouldn't have to file income tax because it'll incriminate him. He lost. That's how they got him on income tax. Capone, you know. And there's Pauline Sabin, Brayberry Land. All right, look at this now. People demanding, look at these meetings. Remember, we had a big picture before of the WCTU. Look at all these people. They want beer. It's 1931. So it's getting shaky. And then here it is again. Marching in the streets. And then, I'm from repeal. Does anybody go to the bar? Oh. It's Macy's, isn't it? Yeah. Liquor department. Look at that. And then I think and these are people all getting in line.
Yeah, sorry, okay.
No, it's all right. And these people all getting in line to get a liquor license. Look, I know, you see it. It's just so impractical, the whole thing. Okay, you ready? The moonlight falls the softest in Bonnet. In summer days comes softest in Bonnet. Friendship is the strongest, love light grows the longest, yet wrong is always wrongest in Bonnet. Life burdens bear the lightest in Bonnet, and living comes the highest in Bonnet. Poker players play the keenest, cards come out the meanest, and pockets empty cleanest in Bonnet. The sun shines the brightest in Bonnet. Dark days are the lightest in Bonnet. The ocean waves the bluest, good friends are the truest, and homely girls the fewest in Bonnet. Bootleggers are the gladdest in Bonnet. Hip pockets are the thickest. Rum runners are the slickest. Firemen turn out the quickest in Bonnet. The news is always newest in Bonnet, and stills are not the fewest in Bonnet. Yet hooch turns out the clearest, and by no means the dearest, yet it acts the queerest in Bonnet. Electricity is the highest in Bonnet. Republicans not the brightest in Bonnet. Church collections are the lightest. Native are all the tightest, and taxes are the highest in Bonnet. The streets are always cleanest in Bonnet. Hard times are the leanest in Bonnet. Poor folks are the proudest. Democrats talk the loudest. The landscaper is the grandest. And politics are the damnedest in Bonnet. That's it.